The Crusades and the Legacy of Medieval Religious Warfare. Introduction. The Crusades, a series of religiously motivated military campaigns initiated by the Catholic Church, remain one of the most defining and controversial aspects of medieval history. From the late 11th to the late 13th centuries, these campaigns were driven by a blend of religious zeal, political ambition, and economic interests. Their stated aim was the reclamation of Jerusalem and other sacred sites from Muslim control, but their consequences extended far beyond the battlefield. This essay explores the Crusades in detail, examining their origins, major events, and lasting legacy on Europe, the Islamic world, and beyond. Historical context. The Crusades cannot be understood without appreciating the deeply religious nature of medieval society. Christianity was central to the identity of medieval Europe, shaping its politics, culture, and worldview. The papacy wielded immense influence, and the concept of holy war was deeply ingrained. The rise of Islam in the 7th century and its rapid expansion brought much of the Mediterranean under Muslim control, including Jerusalem, a city of profound significance to Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. By the 11th century, the Seljuk Turks posed a new threat, defeating the Byzantine Empire at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 and advancing toward Constantinople. This prompted Emperor Alexios I to seek assistance from Western Europe, leading Pope Urban II to call for the First Crusade in 1095. The Major Crusades. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. The First Crusade was a remarkable success, resulting in the capture of Jerusalem in 1099. Motivated by religious fervor and the promise of spiritual rewards, tens of thousands of Europeans joined the campaign. The Crusaders established several Crusader states, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, but their methods were often brutal, with massacres of Muslim and Jewish populations. The Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149. In response to the fall of Edessa, the Second Crusade was launched but ended in failure. Poor planning, internal divisions, and lack of local support contributed to its collapse. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. The Third Crusade was launched after Saladin, the Muslim leader, recaptured Jerusalem in 1187. Led by prominent figures such as Richard the Lionheart, it achieved some military successes but failed to retake Jerusalem. A truce allowed Christian pilgrims access to the city. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204. The Fourth Crusade took a dramatic turn when the Crusaders, instead of reaching the Holy Land, sacked Constantinople, a Christian city. This event deepened the rift between the Eastern Orthodox and Catholic churches. Later Crusades. Subsequent Crusades, including the 5th through the 9th, were less impactful and often poorly organized. They failed to achieve significant gains and marked the decline of the crusading movement. Impact on Europe. Religious and social changes. The Crusades strengthened the authority of the Catholic Church and the papacy, as they became a unifying force in Christendom. However, they also exposed divisions within Europe, as political rivalries often undermined crusading efforts. Economic impacts. The Crusades opened up new trade routes, linking Europe to the wealth of the East. Italian city-states such as Venice and Genoa flourished, becoming hubs of commerce. Military and cultural influence. The Crusades contributed to the development of medieval chivalry, knightly orders such as the Knights Templar, and advancements in military technology. Impact on the Islamic world. The Islamic world experienced both devastation and resilience. While the Crusades initially caught Muslim states unprepared, leaders like Saladin eventually unified the region against the invaders. The period also facilitated cultural exchanges, with Islamic knowledge influencing European science, medicine, and philosophy. Impact on Jewish communities. Jewish communities in Europe faced persecution during the Crusades, including massacres and forced conversions. This period marked an escalation of anti-Semitic attitudes, with long-lasting consequences for Jewish life in Europe. Cultural and intellectual exchange. The Crusades facilitated the transmission of knowledge and culture between East and West. Crusaders brought back advancements in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and art, enriching European intellectual life and paving the way for the Renaissance. Legacy. Religious polarization. The Crusades entrenched animosities between Christians and Muslims, shaping perceptions of the other for centuries. These divisions continue to influence interfaith relations today. Modern interpretations. In modern times, the Crusades are often viewed through the lens of religious intolerance and imperialism. They have been invoked in both Western and Islamic rhetoric, highlighting their enduring symbolic power. Colonialism and warfare. The Crusades provided a model for later European colonial ventures, demonstrating the use of religious justification for territorial expansion. Conclusion. The Crusades were a defining feature of medieval history, shaping the religious, cultural, and political landscapes of Europe and the Islamic world. Their legacy is complex, reflecting both the aspirations and the tragedies of medieval society. Understanding the Crusades offers valuable insights into the dynamics of religious warfare and its impact on global history. Historical context in detail. Medieval religious zeal and the role of the papacy. Medieval Europe was characterized by a deeply ingrained religious worldview. The Catholic Church was not merely a spiritual institution, it was a political powerhouse. The promise of eternal salvation was a persuasive motivator, and the concept of bellum sacrum, holy war, justified the use of violence in defense or expansion of the faith. Pope Urban II's call for the First Crusade at the Council of Clermont exemplified the Church's ability to rally diverse and often fractious kingdoms under a single cause. Urban's speech in 1095 emphasized the spiritual rewards of participating in the crusade, framing it as both an act of penance and a divine mission. He invoked vivid imagery of Christian suffering under Muslim rule, appealing to the knight's sense of honor and duty. His declaration was met with overwhelming enthusiasm, evidenced by the immediate mobilization of armies and commoners alike. The geopolitical situation. By the 11th century, Europe was emerging from a period of fragmentation following the fall of the Roman Empire. Feudalism provided a hierarchical structure, but constant internal conflicts plagued the continent. The Crusades offered an external focus, channeling martial energies outward. In the Islamic world, the political landscape was equally dynamic. The Abbasid Caliphate had waned in power, and the Seljuk Turks had risen as formidable rulers. Their advance into Anatolia and pressure on Byzantium created a sense of urgency for the Christian East and West to unite against a common adversary. The significance of Jerusalem. Jerusalem held unparalleled spiritual importance. For Christians, it was the site of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. For Muslims, it was the location of the Prophet Muhammad's night journey and ascension to heaven. This shared reverence made the city a focal point of conflict and devotion. The major crusades in greater detail. The First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. The First Crusade was marked by an unprecedented mobilization of forces. Not only knights but also peasants, women, and children joined the effort. This diverse group, often called the People's Crusade, faced numerous hardships, including starvation, disease, and ambushes, before the main armies even reached the Levant. The campaign culminated in the Siege of Jerusalem in 1099. The Crusaders' victory was brutal. Reports describe widespread slaughter of Muslims and Jews within the city. Despite the bloodshed, the Crusaders' success reinforced the idea that their mission was divinely sanctioned. The Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149. The fall of Edessa in 1144, the first Crusader state to be established, prompted the Second Crusade. Unlike its predecessor, this campaign suffered from poor leadership and coordination. King Louis VII of France and Emperor Conrad III of Germany led separate armies, which were decimated by Turkish forces before they could achieve their objectives. The campaign ended in humiliation, signaling the limits of European unity. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. The recapture of Jerusalem by Saladin in 1187 spurred the Third Crusade. This campaign is remembered for the rivalry between Saladin and Richard the Lionheart. While Richard achieved notable victories, including the capture of Acre, he ultimately failed to retake Jerusalem. The treaty between Saladin and Richard allowed Christian pilgrims safe access to the city, a compromise that underscored the campaign's partial success. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204. The Fourth Crusade deviated drastically from its original intent. Financial difficulties led the Crusaders to align with Venetian merchants, who redirected the campaign toward Constantinople. The sacking of the Byzantine capital in 1204 was a turning point, permanently damaging relations between the Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic churches. This betrayal highlighted the increasingly political and economic motives behind later crusades. The later crusades, subsequent crusades, such as the Albigensian Crusade, targeting heretics in southern France, and the Children's Crusade, a tragic episode involving thousands of children, demonstrated the declining coherence of the movement. By the 13th century, the crusading spirit had waned, though the rhetoric of holy war persisted. Impact on Europe. The strengthening of papal authority.